Hyperborea, the land beyond the aurora borealis, has been described by various authors as being the polar origin of humankind. From the center, we experienced a solidification and devolution. Our bodies became less of light and more dense, more grounded in this third-dimensional realm. So the idea of evolution is actually a reverse of what has happened. Mankind did not begin as an ape, but progressively devolved into its beast-like condition, as it strayed physically and spiritually from its mystical homeland in the Arctic. What Jocelyn Godwin in Arctos the Polar Myth blames on succumbing to the demonic energies of the South Pole. I refer to William Warren, who in Paradise Found wrote, "The South Polar region is the location of demons and destructive divinities. The North is the hemisphere of the gods, and the South of the Asuras, or demons." In 330 BC, Pytheas, explorer and navigator from the Greek colony of Phocia, wrote in his diary, "I am so eager to turn the prow of my ship toward the north. From there I must go to the throne of the sun. I want to go to Hyperborea, where I am at the top of the world, and I understand the beauty of the highest numbers. I want to go to the Hyperboreans." In Celtic mythology, there are demigods called the Tuatha De Danann. A collection of Celtic poems called Liborgabala describes the Tuatha De Danann as having resided in the northern islands of the world, where they were instructed in the magic arts and imparted with timeless wisdom. These northern island cities were called Phaleus, Gorius, Findius, and Murius. This land is holy and imperishable, able to be penetrated only by those who have strong will of the heart and mind. The book The Ancient Wisdom summarizes this land, in which author Jeffrey Ashe writes, "In the far north, there is a high and paradisal place, peopled by an assembly of beings of superhuman longevity and wisdom. This is the place where earth rises to join the celestial center, the pole of heaven." The axis mundi is the world's center, or the connection between heaven and earth. This term means the pivot point or line connecting the earth and the heavens. Universal consciousness, the thread of oneness which connects all living souls, is at the 0 point of our plane, at the center. This cosmic connection between heaven and hell, high and low, and the different dimensions, is the axis mundi. It's like a spine that holds together all of the realms, from lowest to highest, with the human world, known to the Norsemen as Midgard, in the center. Hyperborea is the ancient Greek name for the land beyond the north wind, the North Polar Paradise of many names. In Pliny's Natural History by Pliny the Elder, written in the 1st century AD, I quote, "Beyond the North Pole, there is a happy nation whom they call Hyperborea, who live exceedingly long, and are celebrated for fabulous wonders. There are believed to be the poles of the world, and the very ends of the revolution of the heavens, having for 6 months together one entire day, and night as long. The region is open to the sun of a happy temperature, void of all hurtful impulse of air. The woods are their habitations, and the groves where they worship the gods man by man, and in companies. Discord and all disease are unknown, and they never die." William Warren, the author of Paradise Found, knew of this divine location. I quote, "Whoever seeks as a probable location for paradise, the heavenliest spot on earth, with respect to light and darkness, and with respect to celestial scenery, must be content to seek it at the Arctic pole. Here is the true city of the sun. Here is the one and only spot on earth respecting which it would seem as if the Creator had said, as of his own heavenly residence, there shall be no night there. This center point lies between the heavenly swastika of the pole star Polaris. The swastika is one of the most pervasive ancient symbols in the world, and this is because it is the representation of the movement of the Big Dipper around the pole star throughout the seasons. It is the sign of ascension, the sign of the center of this toroidal field. Shambhala is lush with parks and meadows, flowers, and abundant vegetation. All the inhabitants of Shambhala live in absolute peace and harmony, free from sickness or hunger. They are all of a healthy and beautiful appearance, and their language is Sanskrit. There are no such things as physical punishment or imprisonment, as there is nobody to be punished. The kings are not tyrannical, but are religious figures, and evil is foreign to the land. As pure of a place this is, the inhabitants are not said to be renunciants of the material world, but rather enjoy all pleasures that we do, and use them as a means of liberation. It's said that the inhabitants of Shambhala possess all sorts of extraordinary psychic powers, such as the ability to read others' thoughts, to foresee the future, and walk at very high speeds. They also have the ability to become invisible. It's an intermediary state between samsara and nirvana, samsara being the state everyone who is watching this is in, the cycle of reincarnation, and nirvana being the liberation from this cycle of rebirth and death. Shambhala is therefore considered to be the best place to achieve enlightenment and spiritual wisdom, the final earthly point before liberation. The guidebooks to Shambhala, whose puzzling directions are a mixture of realism and fantasy, can be read on one level as instructions for taking an inner journey from the familiar world of the surface consciousness through the wilds of the subconscious to the hidden sanctuary of the superconscious. This is Ultima Thule, and I quote Peter Moon's book The Black Sun. Ultima Thule is identified as the Teutonic Garden of Eden. It also parallels the story of Babylon, where mankind lost its connection to the Godhead. In Norse cosmology, the cosmic world tree Yggdrasil is supported by 3 roots. The third root extends to heaven, and beneath it is the very holy Well of Urd. The Norse heaven is called Asgard. There, a beautiful hall stands under the ash tree near the Well of Urd. The water of this well is described as so holy that anyone who enters it will become as white as the membrane called the skin that lies around the inside of the eggshell. In a recent video, we talked about the first book of Adam and Eve and the living waters the scripture reveals. These are the purifying living waters of the Holy Grail at the center. What we've been experiencing is nothing more than a projection system of consciousness funneling outwards from the center so we can resolve our collective dualistic condition. It's just like Carl Jung said, the psychological rule says that when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. That is to say, when the individual remains undivided and does not become conscious of his inner opposite, the world must perforce act out the conflict and be torn into opposing halves. The toroidal shape is similar to a donut, but rather than having an empty central hole, the topology of a torus folds in upon itself, and all points along its surface converge together into a zero-dimensional point at the center. This is the 0 point, the singularity, as all shapes and geometric patterns emerge from one point, And because all is divine and full of creation, this dictates that this point is always energizing, enlivening, and full of potential. This is the void of nothingness that contains full potential to create. This geometric shape could be used to describe the self-reflexive nature of consciousness. The torus allows a vortex of energy to form which bends back along itself and re-enters itself. Thus, the energy of a torus is continually refreshing itself, continually influencing all that it is. Toroidal energy fields exist around everything in existence: humans, plants, atoms, the sun, this realm. And because everything is related, when this initial spark happened, everything that came after was enveloped in the sacred toroidal structure. The true Big Bang was really the initiation of the structure of the toroidal field. From the 0 point, all things emerged and all things shall converge. Before Saturn became the Grim Reaper, we were in the golden age of Chronos, Chronos being the Greek analog of Saturn. The Greek poet Hesiod tells us of a golden race of mortal men who lived in the time of Chronos when he was reigning in heaven, and they lived like gods, without sorrow of heart, remote and free from toil. Miserable age rested not on them. We are dissolving into the 0 point, reconfiguring the toroid, and therefore transferring dimensions, creating new timelines by merging all timelines,